Intimate Ambivalence was really about keeping things open-ended and finding multiple ways to enter the work. The title as such probably could be used for all the work, as I think it's in the practice also. So I always like to set up like several positions and then play out all those different relationships within the work itself. So even if the work may take a very specific form, it might have multiple associations or meanings and hopefully is able to create those associations. I think the wall drawings are really a culmination of the experience of this particular exhibition. So the fact that, the show was curated with certain works and there was a connection created with particular works from '97, it was great to revisit and thus see for myself also what are the recurring themes, some in particular, some less, and then play upon that. For me, the wall drawing is really that one moment of practice which is happening outside of the studio, where you do really give up control. And so there is a different type of energy that gets replaced. And I'm really interested in trying to capture that vulnerability or that sort of energy that's going to only occur because decision making is different. You have to work within a tight parameter of all different things, time is an issue and then the materials are an issue, but then there's something else that gets born out of all those situations. It's definitely something that keeps growing. So there's this sense of an open-endedness to this work also, which relates directly to the topic of this, the title of this exhibition. It's the only thing which is, say, less precious, and that maybe is again a space which then maybe allows the viewer to go in and out, or use that as a sort of a departure point to go back and to see the other works and then understand the practices. Because again, I think injecting labor and scale and time is how different meaning gets created, especially in overlapped spaces and the in-between areas that tend to collect the meaning. So the portrait series really came about when I was first invited to go to Laos as to be part of the Quiet in the Land project, Quiet in the Land series project. And that really triggered this work, and then I have continued to go to Laos several times and plan to go again. And the film and the show is also related to this way of navigating a very complex country, but at the same time it's very accessible and really gentle on the surface. So I think when I first arrived in Laos, I was very aware that there was this immediate surface which was so gentle and yet at the same time this very turbulent history that was beneath all of that. And I was trying to see how to access that sort of invisible layer and that paradox, and chose to work with the portraits and focused on the novices, because perhaps I was projecting that sense of locating that paradox onto these people and settled on working with the novices. Working with these drawings and working with the novices was really invested in finding something particularly unique that each faith had to offer, that each individual had to offer, and to highlight that, and to maybe just like exaggerate it, whether it was a particular look, or whether it was a frown, or whether it was like this innocence or a maturity for ahead of their age, because the majority of the novices are really young. They are in training, and they are really young boys that come from a very vast ethnic plurality, which is really interesting, because that's not what one tends to see at first. The materials chosen are consciously inexpensive. It's graphite and paper, and something which was just locally available. And then I also was teaching drawing and doing some drawing workshops with the novices, so I got to focus them on themselves, because most of our workshop was about them focusing on each other, which I think was quite interesting, because they never got that opportunity to look at themselves. And so there's this thing going on where the portrait looks back at you, so there's this sort of almost a kind of a layer which is a little bit confrontational, but at the same time it's created in this sort of sense which makes it very ethereal. So these sort of nuances were very, very much what I was wanting to convey out of the graphite, and the fact that the graphite is done in a particular manner, it crafts a particular look, and this is something which you can see in other works also, especially some of the very detailed works from '97. You can see like portraiture in there, and so it has occurred on and off throughout my work, but here it's devoid of anything else. It's literally about a particular character, and then also the relationship between each work is what creates the piece in its totality. And I'm working for, I think, maybe like 60 or so portraits right now, but it's one monastery in particular that I'm working with, and the abbot of that monastery was the first portrait that I did, which is also included here. Yeah, I think the animation works were a very natural outcome of doing drawings and creating a large sort of pool of images and a vocabulary, and then figuring out ways to transform each image, and sort of this process of dislocating to create new meaning was really fundamental in creating the animation. So I found that animation was really a natural progression of how I work and draw, and I think the film is perhaps a different departure. Though I'm sure as I do more of it, there will be very clear connections. But right now, because it's so recent, that it seems like it's more of a departure, which perhaps has not been visible in the body of work, but nonetheless, I've always used it to collect information.